Crilley Show. I'm excited to be using one of our downstairs studios, and I'm even more excited about our guest this morning. We've got Gene Vezina. He is the author of this book. It's called Dementia of the Mind, but Not of the Heart, and it's a very personal journey that he went on with his wife, Kay. Gene, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think your book is so powerful because it deals with something that so many Americans are dealing with right now, taking care of someone with Alzheimer's. So tell us about your journey.
Okay. My journey started in around 2008 when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And then it progressed from dealing with her at home to having to put her eventually into a memory care. And so during that time, there was many adventures along the way, getting lost, wandering, some humor. I was telling somebody, one of the, still funny to me is when she would go with me shopping, she could never go by herself anymore. But she knew a lot of people. So we'd go to Publix is where we go, and I would see somebody, I'd see you, and I'd go up to you, and I'd say, Jeff, I know you're going to say hello to Kay. So just don't ask her who you are, because she can't do that anymore. And you say, okay. Well, this day I missed, and there was a guy walking right towards her, and I knew, gosh, he's going to go say hello to Kay. But I couldn't get there fast enough, and he got right in her face, and he said, Kay Vezina. How you doing? Do you know who I am? And she looked at it, and she said, no, do you? And so the people that were around just went on the floor, and he was just flabbergasted. So there's some humor in the book because you can't live it. There's a lot of love in the book because if you knew her, you loved her. And I knew her for 60 years. We were married. And so the book is primarily a primer for those who are caring. There's 6 million people with Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Now, if you take the 6 million, there's about 20-some million caregivers, unpaid caregivers. Not talking about professional caregivers. So this is trying to help them go through the journey.
And it can be a lonely journey for the caregiver because who's taking care of the caregiver?
Boy, you hit it on the head. Exactly. Yeah. It's very lonely. You know, all of a sudden I'm coming home to an empty house. And as I put out in the book, you take things for granted. You never think when she's there before. You get up, food's on the table, come home from work, food's on the table, get ready to go to work. Things are all ironed and done, washed, of which I can do none of that. And so that was just the physical part, but then the lonely part by yourself. I never went out to eat. It was just any fun. You're sitting at a table by yourself. And so it is lonely. And then I would visit her 3 times a day, and that helped a lot. Helped me and her.
Let's talk about that. When it started to progress, you had a decision to make on whether or not to continue taking care of her at home.
Yes.
How tough was that decision?
Very tough. It's the toughest decision I think I've ever made because I'm saying this is it. There is no happy ending to Alzheimer's. You know, you may hear somebody has, as brutal as it is, cancer, and you'll hear the occasional, oh my gosh, they're surviving, they're doing well. This doesn't happen. So that was the immediate thing that hit me was this is my first goodbye. And so my daughter was very instrumental in helping come over and prepare her to go. And that's the first time that I've ever cried that hard.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I just couldn't control myself. So that was a big decision, and it is a lonely, lonely, lonely job. You don't go out to eat anymore, and so you think too much about your loved one. And that's where there's a chapter in here on Chick-fil-A, which I call more than just chickens, because without that, they filled a void. While I was feeding people, they were feeding my heart and my spirit. And
So tell me that, you had a great career in what field was it?
pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals.
Yes, sir.
And so Chick-fil-A was kind of an outlet for you to experience a normal life?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I had not intended to do that. We had gone to a Chick-fil-A, a different one, before that, my wife and I, quite a bit. And this new one opened near my house. And so I, just for old time's sake, I said, I'm going to go in there and get a Chick-fil-A sandwich. So I sat down at the table, and I hear a voice behind me that says, how's your meal? And I said, I've had more of these than you have, was the owner. So he laughed, and he said, can I sit down with you for a while? And I said, sure. And so we still laugh about it. He said, Gene, that was no accident you came in. God led you there. And I don't come in normally in the morning on Saturdays. There
Wow.
I was. And you had never been in the store before. There you were. And so we talked about my career and that type of thing. And then we talked about working there to build a store. And I said, you want to hire the oldest guy in the world? He said, I'll take my chances. So I said, okay, Grant Wells. One that you should know, my priority is my wife. I go there 3 times a day. So if that's going to interfere with your scheduling, let's call it off right now. Well, that was 6 years ago. And so, in fact, he did the foreword in the book. He felt so strong about it because since we met that day, his dad has dementia now.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, just unbelievable.
Did somebody along the line say, you need to write a book, or where did that idea come from?
Well, it really came, I kept a lot of notes, and my son was over one night. He came in and would take me to dinner. He lives in Nashville. He said, Dad, what are all these notes? And I said, well, that's about when I go to the doctor, I can talk to him very specifically. He said, you ought to write a book. You know how many people you could help? And I talked with my daughter about it too, and I said, okay, I will. And so I hired a book coach because I had never done that. I could barely write my name. So that's how we did.
Now, you brought some letters because the book has really touched countless people. Can you read a couple of the letters
sure.
that you brought with you?
Yeah. I've had people who've bought the book and just have replied back to me. Here's one. I read your book and I'm so excited for the story it tells and the help it will give. Your deep, abiding love for Kay is central and precious. And then as you followed her decline, you outlined things that aided you in the journey. I think many people who are caring for loved ones, not just those with Alzheimer's, will benefit from the wisdom you shared. Your book is a lovely love story on the one hand and practicality on the other. Blessings.
Wow.
I just finished reading your book and have tears streaming down my face as I write this. Tears of joy and sweetness as I experience what a blessed relationship you and Kay shared, and tears of loss and sadness. And thank you so much for sharing this book with me and everyone else. It is a precious tribute to your beautiful wife. It's being a wonderful source of strength and encouragement to others experiencing this heartbreaking time. I never intended it to be a love story. That's how it was interpreted. The last part is what I wanted to really do, and that is give source and strength to those who are going through that journey.
You were telling me a great story off the air about your grandson and a comment he made about how often you were visiting Kay.
Yeah, he was just very, when Kay was, they live in Tennessee, and when Kay was in good health, she just loved, that was like most grannies. They called her Mimi. And so they didn't get to see her as much because they lived there, but she would, on the knee and rocking them and all this kind of stuff. So that was his thought. And he was given an assignment to do a term paper as a senior in high school on Alzheimer's, of all things. So he asked his dad, and he said, sure, come with me, and we'll go see Mimi. So when he was there, one of the comments he made was, as I look at my grandmother, she can't talk, she can't communicate. She did all these things for me before she made banana bread and all this. What a great person. But now, why doesn't my grandfather go there 3 times a day? That was a bewilderment to him, once in a while, okay? And then he expressed what I could never express. And that was when he looked at how she looked at me and holding hands, things like that. He said, I've seen what love is. So that was very precious to me, and I couldn't read it the second time for a while, So that was my point with that is, if you're a grandchild, don't think you don't have an impact on either one of those grandparents. Go visit with them. Go sit with them. You don't have to stay very long.
Yes.
Bring some ice, whatever. They'll probably give you ice cream there.
Well, I know, couples get married, and those vows don't always mean what they're supposed to mean, for better and for worse, and,
right.
and sickness and in health. What did it do for you to visit your wife when she sometimes wouldn't recognize you?
Yeah. No, I was, in fact, tell you real short how this can hurt you if you don't know how to handle it. She was telling me, this is when she was home, and she said, Gene, I wanted to, I'm sorry, you're not Gene. I said, well, who be I? And she said, you're a sweetheart. I got a promotion. Because, see, in her mind, it was from the heart. He's not my husband, he's not Gene. But this nice guy comes and sees me all the time. He takes me out. He takes good care of me. So he's a sweetheart. And the tail end of that is when she was in the last week or two, as it came out of being alive, I was over there, and I asked her this a lot, but she could never answer. And I said, hey, am I still your sweetheart? And of course, usually it was nothing. And this day, she grabbed my hand and she said, yes. So that was overwhelming to me. That was her heart. That's why I say it's a dementia of the mind, but not of the heart. I mean, she could still speak to me from her heart. So that was, that's a part you have to be able to realize that's not her saying, I don't love you, or I don't know who you are. That's where I'm at. And let God take the rest. Don't get in God's way is the thing I tell myself all the time. He knows where you're at. He knows where your wife is at. Let him do his work. And he did.
Many people have called this a love story, and you remind me of Real Life Notebook. Did you see that movie?
Yes, I did, with James Garner. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, one of the most romantic movies of all time.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Give our audience some advice if they're going through this, or they have a loved one who's going through this.
Yeah.
What's the best way to take care of yourself? I mean, they always talk about put your oxygen mask on first.
I hadn't heard about that. That's good.
The caretaker has to take care of himself or herself.
Yeah.
So what are some tips you can give our audience?
Well, I think one is, you hit it on the head, your caretaker can't be effective if he can't take care of himself. And in the case of Chick-fil-A, that was a big thing, because I now had something to do other than think about Kay all day long. You can't be serving customers and cleaning the room and all this, and you'll hurt somebody if you do. And so that's one. It doesn't have to be Chick-fil-A. Mm-hmm. It can be work at the YMCA, do some charity work.
Yeah.
So, but do something to get your mind off yourself.
You told me before the show started that your wife would sometimes make comments, and you thought to yourself, why correct her?
Yes.
What were you saying?
Well, it's kind of like the saying, is the juice worth the squeeze? And what is accomplished by saying, Jeff, I told you that 3 times. You're going to tell me a 4th time anyway, except you're going to get a little upset that I'm correcting you. So the first way I learned that was when she said, is it nice outside? And I told her. Is it nice outside? And I told her. And the 3rd time I said, holy cow, this is not a normal reaction. So I said, you know what? Would you go outside with me and tell me how it is outside? And she said, oh, yeah. See, she'd like that, doing something. So we went outside, and she said, it's great outside. I said, well, thank you. Never came up again. So you learn, don't take this personal. They're not trying to aggravate you.
Yes.
But correcting them, no. She's going to run out in front of a car, that's different. Then you're doing something from a safety standpoint. But just in terms of, that's bothering me. You think that's bothering you, you should be in her mind. Everything rumbling around, not having direction, not knowing what you're saying.
Wow. I know that there are, I speak for my audience when I say there are people who are touched by this story and are going to be moved, and they're going to want to get the book. How do they get a hold of the book?
Oh, okay. There's a church in Atlanta which has bought a number of books, Primitive Church, and they want to be able to try this. www.perimeter.org/bookstore.
Perimeter.org/bookstore.
And then you go to online store, and that'll take you, click on favorites, and it'll give a write-up on the book, and it's $15.
That's perfect. And if you forget that address, you can just Google it. I did it before the broadcast.
Oh, did you?
And it's right there on
Great.
On the web. The book again, Dementia of the Mind, but not of the Heart. Gene, thank you so much for sharing your love story.
My pleasure.
And inspiring my
Thank you.
viewers.
Thank you, Jeff, for
Thanks.
having me on.
Well, thank you. And that's it for this edition of the Jeff Crilley Show. We'll see you next time.